Chapter 5 Suicide, a Spiritual Sin. Let me start with an anecdote from which families and teachers could take an encouraging leaf. Once, in a public elementary school, there was a race among young students. The prize was a box of delicious ice cream. This particular child had practiced a lot for this race, but she could only secure 10th place among the 50 participants on the day of the race. Still, her family members rushed forward to embrace the child with a box full of ice cream when the race finished. The child was amazed and asked why they were doing it, as she clearly was not the winner. The answer which they gave her filled the child with pride and positive thoughts. They told her that they had seen her practice daily, and today she had given her best efforts in the race. Even though she had secured 10th place, she was a winner among the 40 students, and only 9 were ahead of her. So she deserved the ice cream, as she had brought pride and joy to the family. These encouraging words helped remove any remorse or guilt for coming 10th place and fill the child with strong positive feelings and willpower to improve. She had very grateful feelings that she was not alone in a race called life. She could always count on the support of her family. That is why parents and even teachers, who usually are very generous in praising the winners, should be extra careful when criticizing the losers and should be cautious in comparing the child's failure. These barbed words, spoken intentionally or unintentionally, can change the person's attitude and character. Whatever the family utters to losers becomes seeds of disappointment and depression, sown in a young and tender mind, and may unknowingly trigger a suicide attempt in the future. Parents cannot play God by forcing their aspiration on their kids. A random example is that if the parents are in medical or legal practice, the child must also pursue medicine or law. Parents cannot pave their children's road with their wealth and influence. The harsh words and the strict discipline also plays a significant role in molding the youth's future life. These barbed words leave lasting impression or mental scars on tender minds whenever the child fails. This results in an inferior complexion throughout their life. That is why some people feel unwanted and think of committing suicide. As I have implied in this book, we all have a spiritual divinity within us. So accordingly, our Creator has created us and given us this gift of life. He will always be on our side in the race called life. So what He has given, only He has the right to take away. It is also the truth that we came empty-handed here on earth and shall go empty-handed. So regardless of whatever we possess or lose here, we will always be on the profit side. We should never get depressed or discouraged by failures. That is why suicide, besides being a crime like homicide or murder, is also a great, grave, divine spiritual sin. Nature or jungle, our teacher. Nature teaches us to have patience, and only then the seeds of our efforts will bear fruits. There are 4 stages in the metamorphosis before a beautiful butterfly emerges from the larva phase. The fruits of the trees would only be ripe for picking at the appropriate time and not sooner. All the dumb creatures of the jungle teach us how important is the gift called life. Every day, we see in the jungle how smaller animals run for their lives so they can survive the day. A classic example is that of a deer running desperately for his life away from the predator. In the jungle, a constant race goes on the survival of the fittest. No animal, however weak, gives in quickly or gives his life to the stronger animal. All the animals teach us that life is precious. A random example can that be of catching a hen on the farm, how she makes you run and run before being caught. Or even a tiny cockroach, mosquito, will make you sweat before it is caught. The prey struggles and tries their best to escape rather than surrender their most valuable thing, their life, to the hunter. This prey and hunter game goes on even in our cities, when goons with weapons make holdups and demand our valuable in exchange for our lives. Whenever someone kidnaps our near and dear ones, we are ready to pay a huge ransom just to get them back alive. When we are rushed to the hospital, we are willing to pay the huge medical bills in exchange for our lives. We instantly learn to value that life is very precious. It cannot and should not be abruptly ended in a rush or wasted for mere earthly or heavenly problems by committing suicide. The reality of suicide. The World Health Organization, or the WHO, recognizes suicide as a public health priority. The first WHO suicide report says, Preventing Suicide, a Global Imperative, published in 2014, aimed to increase the awareness of public health significance. It concluded that suicide prevention is a high priority on the global public health agenda. The prevention of suicide has not been adequately addressed due to a lack of awareness of suicide as a critical public health problem. It is considered taboo, even sometimes openly, to discuss it. Suicide is a serious public health problem. However, suicides are preventable with timely, evidence-based, and often low-cost intervention. Every suicide is a tragedy that affects families, communities, even entire countries, and leave long-lasting, sad memories for the people left behind. There are no advantages to suicide, since the person attempting suicide is not in the proper mind frame to logically assess anything. This is a drastic solution which may seem to be the only escape from their miseries. It is hard to judge it if it is in the right practical choice at that moment of place and time. If happiness and fulfillment of one's wishes lead to great glee and fills one's mind with positive thoughts, then the letdowns or rejections of one's expectation in all relation in life fill the mind with depression. These unfulfilled expectations give birth to dark negative thoughts, often leading to emotions of misery, high stress, fear, and a total lack of uselessness and unwantedness to the entire world. Let us study this expectation and their effects chronologically. As we are born, we expect parents to be responsible for our own basic needs and guard us against this world's dangers. As we reach the elementary school stage, we still expect our family to do everything for us without asking anything in return, but never to scold us, especially in front of others, when we make mistakes, as we are only minors. As we grow up and attend high school and college, our expectation keeps on increasing. Now we feel that we know many things. We come to rely upon knowledge from our friend circle and modern technical gadgets. The family's protection, which was looked upon as a necessity, is now taken for granted. The house, which used to be our heaven, now feels like a strict, intolerable, and suffocating prison. As the youth struggles to come to terms with the house's rules and the regulation and the mental torture of bullying schoolmates in the outside world, they are caught up in a daily dilemmas of trusting and relating to role models. They desperately reach out to role models like family members and teachers, real or real characters, bosom buddies, or advisors. The naive youngsters should be extra careful in choosing their role models who might help them or exploit them and abuse them physically, mentally, and even spiritually. Individuals are easily influenced by their role models who are egoist and bossy in nature. The general tendency is to commit unnecessary violence against their family and friends and the world in general. This is evidenced by thoughtless family and school and sometimes even communal violent shooting rampages we see worldwide. The misguided zealots turn to rampage shooting without any consideration for community or personal safety. This is when misguided, shy, and silent individuals are prone to self-destruct and harm themselves by committing suicide or even targeting others. Why do people commit suicide? Well, the reasons may be strict family, peer pressure, unnecessary comparison, or harboring a self-blaming attitude whenever things go wrong or in unfavorable circumstances. Pessimist, fear failure in everything, unjustified bullying and personal shortcomings, over-addiction of modern gadgets like phones, tablets, laptops, and computers, lack of communication causing stress and depression, trying to please and fit in with everybody, worrying about the opinions of others, association with gambling, and a desire to become instant billionaires, addiction to alcohol and other harmful drugs and substances resulting in an unstable mind to comprehend reality and give in to fictional demons, financial and social pressures, mental disorders and depressions, obsessions and desires are considered to be the root causes of sorrows and often result in self-destruction. Relationship breakup and loss of housing, jail prisoners with criminal or legal problems, chronic pain and lingering illness patient, first-hand traumatic experience of violent conflicts and disasters, or members of vulnerable groups like refugees, migrants, or LGBT members. Celebrities and public figures who have committed suicide. Vincent van Gogh in 1890, Virginia Woolf 1941, Evelyn McHale 1947, Ernest Hemingway 1961, Marilyn Monroe 1962, Sylvia Plath 1963, R. Bud Diver 1987, Kurt Cobain 1994, Ray Combs 1996, Hunter S. Thompson 2005, Nikki Bacharach 2007, Isabel Blow 2007, actress Lucy Gordon 2009, model Jia Khan 2013, American transgender Leela Alcorn 2014, Robin Williams 2014, Helena Belmonte 2014, singer Chester Bennington 2017, pop singer Gu Hara 2019, wrestler Hana Kimura 2020, and Brian Bernstein in 2020. Considering that all these celebrities had everything for them, still they did commit suicide. So there must be other reasons which drove them to suicide, preventing the lurking dangers of suicide. Whenever anyone faces daunting problems, the first thing for them is to confide in people they can trust and who are more mature and knowledgeable than them. They join school chats or suicide anonymous group, voice out concerns subtly in discussions, confess to the experienced teacher of your TMCs. After listening attentively, the experienced teachers will give you spiritual and divine advices regarding those personal problems. However, our attitude is so sad, miserable, and complaining to the divine because of not having proper shoes, while many people have no feet. People suffer from the tragic loss of other limbs and senses, yet the physically challenged are seen to prevail over their handicap and often excel in many areas of life where even healthy people often fail. This divine knowledge is imparted to people with low esteem. Pessimists may start to feel that they are not alone and that God will always be with them. Here the pessimist should learn that God has made everything in pairs. Example, day and night, happiness and sadness, confidence and fear, hello and goodbye, and birth and death. These pairs are temporary and will come and go according to their duration. So they should believe that nothing is going to last forever. Time is a great equalizer. Pessimists should understand that shameful situations can be reversed by speaking out. Financial losses can be recovered by working hard. Physical and mental sickness can be cured. Family and friends' misunderstanding can be worked out. A job lost can be gotten back. To recap, all problems on earth can be overcome with faith and patience. That all they have to do is to keep faith and patience in our inner divinity. And suicide is the ultimate spiritual sin and a solution sought by the pessimist. They can then become optimist instead of pessimist and started to see all the positive things which have happened to them and develop a thankful attitude by seeing the brighter side of life. As they reach this stage of thought, they will start to think of all the pains and anguish that the people they will leave behind after their abrupt departure from the planet. The inner divinity will then seem to caution the individual from not thinking of suicide and whisper some words of wisdom to heed them. They will imagine the sad and wailing mother, the ashamed father, and a total vacuum of relation and those who will be left behind when they stop existing because of their cowardly, deluded, and hasty actions. Once they arrive at these realistic conclusions, the thoughts of suicide may fade away and instead be replaced by a strong feeling of hope and a strong urge to give themselves a second chance to live in this miserable world. By working hard and with mental strength in due time, the money, name, and fame, the bullying, and the close relation of the heart that were overpowering them could be controlled, and the circumstances will change in one's favor in due time, bringing in a rosy future. As they say, night is the darkest before it ushers in the bright sunrise. Tips to become mentally strong. Try to entertain positive and happy thoughts. Never harbor thoughts of comparison and expectations. Control your negative emotions, or they will control you. Do not react emotionally and take things personally. Let your loving and forgiving attitude prevail over revenge and hatred, and thus become your strength. Read books and have role models that inspire you to help your fellow brethren. Avoid isolation, alienation, and separation, which leads to severe and dangerous depression. Confide your fears with your parent and close relatives. Avoid negative traits of idleness, frustrations, unnecessary worries, criticism, and narcissism. Learn to pray, meditate, and develop a daily habit of talking to the divine in silence. Before sleeping, confess in Him your deepest fears and your good and evil deeds of the day. He will surely become your best advisor and whisper of wisdom inside you. Heed them. I'm not saying that all of the above apply to all circumstances and situations, but one thing is for sure. After reading this, hopefully, individuals may decide to use the power of their minds against committing suicide. Suicide makes the situation more mysterious and complicated for the people left behind. They struggle to understand. They cannot accept the big loss with a lifetime of guilt, while remorse for the sudden tragedy is thrust upon them. Let us learn something and understand what we have read, that this valuable life is a gift of the divine. We should never abruptly end it by committing suicide. The depressed individual, hopefully, may come to believe that suicide is a spiritual sin. Tips for parents. Parenting is, and always be a difficult job. A parent once said, I thought I had a generation gap with my father until my children started to disagree with me. The problem is how to give advice, especially those in their teens who can be very rebellious, revolting, and resistant. The more our intentions are noble, the more they may misunderstand and rebel. A famous quote from an experienced parent is, before marriage, I had 4 theories of raising children. Now I have 4 children and no theories because nothing seems to work. Every child craves attention and wants to be the center of attention. Usually, the children claim that their parents are hypocrites because they have double standards. Hence, they think that parents are biased as they treat each child differently for basic things like food, clothing, shelter, education, and even love and affection. The parent should not get overly agitated or over anxious. They should relax and keep calm and have more tolerance. They should think of their own youth. The real problem is ego, that is I-ness and my-ness. You are not the architect of their fate, as they are born with their own destinies. Good habits cannot be taught from textbook. They have to be shown by example, by being a role model. Do not impose our ideas on the children or try to fulfill our unsuccessful dreams through them. Avoid embarrassment by giving them sermons on their failures in public. Children prefer a private heart-to-heart conversation. Establish an easy communication system with the children. Do not create peer pressure by being judgmental. Teach them to be thankful for what they are receiving rather than complaining about what others are receiving. Teach them to start earning and saving at a young age so they become financially independent. Take an interest in their interest. Be a good listener so you hear what the children are not saying. Instead of trying to be kids' parent, treat them as adults and become their best friend. Finally, do your best and leave the rest to the divine. The question often arises whether we should give our kids the blanket authority to do whatever they want to do or force them to do what we want them to do. There is no general rule of thumb about which decision will be correct, as every child is unique in their own way. No set of principles or regulations can be applied. It has to be case-to-case basis. This is supported by the last word of Steve Jobs, creator of Apple. He says, we should not try to play God by preparing the safer road for the next generation. Instead, we should bring them out of their comfort zones for them to become physically and mentally strong enough as they face the real world's unfavorable circumstances. Prepare the next generation, our future leaders, by embedding the moral values of hard work, patience, honesty, humbleness, and a general feeling of gratefulness for anything they receive from God, parents, society, or even from their fray enemies. The amount of money and success I have become accustomed to seems useless, meaningless, and pale compared to my impending physical death due to pancreatic cancer. I have learned that you can never hire or pay any employee to take over your sickness on a hospital bed. Everyone should work hard to earn money and position, but remember that if you consider material things to be just means for a comfortable life, you have learned to be the master and not a slave of your life. But if money making has become your passion and obsession, and amassing material things seems to be the only destination or the ultimate goal of your life, you have become a slave and not a master of your desires. Joke time! Refund. Married man, sir, you said it was wrong for people to profit from other people's mistake during your sermon. Did you mean it? Preacher, of course I did. Married man, in that case, please refund me the fees I paid you on my wedding day just a few years ago.